down a US Apache helicopter that was patrolling the Strait of Hormuz overnight, adding that the United States must of necessity respond to this attack. Israel has carried out strikes across southern Lebanon despite a warning from Iran not to continue attacks in the country. President Trump has told the BBC that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu didn't defy his orders to hold off from attacking Iran. We consider what are the factors driving Mr. Netanyahu as he prosecutes his wars against Iran and against Hezbollah. Disappointment and frustration for Iran's football supporters while the players arrive to prepare for their matches. The country's entire allocation of fan tickets has been revoked.
Ready to study abroad? But
well, President Trump has said Iran shot down a US Apache helicopter patrolling the Strait of Hormuz and the US needs to respond to the attack. In a post on his Truth Social platform, he said the two pilots had been rescued and were safe and uninjured. He didn't say what form the US response would take. On Monday, Mr. Trump demanded that Israel and Iran stop firing at each other and return to a ceasefire after renewed clashes. More details here from our North America editor, Sarah Smith.
Donald Trump published this post on his own social media channel, Truth Social, and in it he said there were two pilots involved. Both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the United States must of necessity respond to this attack. So that's a clear warning to Iran. Now, I think in these circumstances, any US president would probably think that they had to respond. But we know that Donald Trump is particularly sensitive to any situation which he thinks makes him look beaten or weakened in any way. I think, though, there is another reason why he will take this opportunity. It's very clear that the US doesn't want to return to full-scale conflict with Iran. But Donald Trump has to keep that possibility on the table whilst he's continuing to negotiate a peace deal. So if he looks so risk-averse that Iran thinks there's no chance of him attacking, he would think that would undermine his negotiating position. So in some ways, he might see this as a useful opportunity to land a blow to show that the US is not frightened of taking action. But by telegraphing it in advance, by saying that there will be attack and directly in response to the downing of the helicopter, he's obviously trying to keep this under control and sort of stop it escalating and spiralling out of control in some kind of tit-for-tat exchange of missiles. But we wait to see what happens.
Sarah Smith there with me is our diplomatic correspondent James Landale. James, what could this mean potentially for this very tentative pause that we've seen?
Well, obviously the risk is that if this escalates once again, I think that, as Sarah was saying, the Americans will want to respond, but in a way that's calibrated, that on the one hand demonstrates deterrence and strength, and not a lack of weakness, but equally doesn't respond so forcefully that it actually leads to the situation becoming further out of control. So I imagine that American military will be now giving the president options and alternatives, say that you could do X, Y, and Z, and then trying to work out what the right response will be from their point of view. The problem is this, is that as we've seen in recent days, the Americans are not running this show at the moment. The momentum, the drive, the decision-making of the agency is largely in the hands of decision-makers in Tehran and in Israel. And I think the risk, therefore, is whether or not the Americans actually calibrate this correctly or not, and risk, as Sarah said, another tit-for-tat exchange of fire.
James, thanks very much indeed. We'll be back with you in a few moments, but we just want to bring in the other developments that we've seen today, because it was an intervention by President Trump that ended on Monday waves of airstrikes between Israel and Iran. Donald Trump's intervention led to an agreement to halt fire between Jerusalem and Tehran. Israel's focus shifted back to Lebanon, effectively Israel's second front in the war. What we've been seeing has been a resumption of strikes in southern Lebanon, in particular airstrikes in the city of Tyre. The Lebanese Health Ministry says at least 8 people have been killed and rescues have been searching through the rubble of the strike for survivors. These are some of the latest pictures showing the aftermath of those strikes on the coastal city. But it comes only hours after the Israeli military had urged residents to leave the area ahead of possible attacks. The evacuation order also included the Christian Quarter for the first time. Tyre is one of the oldest cities on the Mediterranean coast and one of the South's largest. Israel has heavily bombarded the city since Hezbollah drew Lebanon into the Middle East war on March the 2nd. For Israel, its military campaigning in Lebanon is all about Hezbollah, as our Middle East correspondent Hugo Bachego, who's in Beirut, explains.
Israel says its war against Hezbollah is going to continue, opposing those efforts by Iran to link what is happening here to the ceasefire there. And Israeli officials say the goal in Lebanon is to create what they describe as a security zone along the border to protect Israeli communities from Hezbollah's rockets and drones. And I think they see this as an opportunity to degrade Hezbollah, destroy Hezbollah is extremely difficult. This is a complicated issue. Armed resistance is in Hezbollah's DNA. And here in Lebanon, Hezbollah is more than a militia. It is also a political party with representation in the parliament and the government. It is also a social movement running services like schools and hospitals. So it is essential in many people's lives. Now, the group has been weakened in these wars with Israel, but it still enjoys significant support, especially among Shia Muslims. But at the same time, it is increasingly isolated. Many Lebanese blame Hezbollah for dragging the country into these unnecessary wars with Israel and want the group to be disarmed, which is something that so far Hezbollah has rejected. And the government here has been very clear that this can only happen through a negotiated process, that this will not happen through force, and that this is going to take time. And obviously, Lebanon is a country where a lot of people are exhausted by these wars. They want this conflict to end. And in Israel, there is public support for the war to continue, although a lot of people are questioning what else can be achieved in degrading Hezbollah, weakening Hezbollah without a clear political strategy. And what is happening here has become an obstacle in those negotiations for a deal between President Trump and Iran.